Napoleon had always been interested in chancing a mate who participated in his values and beliefs. He wanted someone kind, minding, and compassionate, who would be a good match for him not just as a companion, but also as a sovereign. He'd heard numerous tales of goddesses who came to the area hoping to win his hand, but none of them had stood out to him. One day, as he was going through his library, he came across the story of the Princess and the Pea. It was a story about a Napoleon who wanted to find a woman who was so sensitive that she could feel a pea placed under 20 mattresses. Napoleon was impressed by the Queen's capability to empathize with others, and he decided to marry her. The story of the princess and the pea stuck with Napoleon, and he began to suppose about how he could apply this idea to his hunt for a woman. He decided that he'd test each queen who came to the area to see if they were truly compassionate and kind. He'd his retainers place a single pea under 20 mattresses on the bed of each queen who came to visit. The coming morning, he'd ask the queen how she had slept and see if she mentioned feeling uncomfortable or in pain. At first, Napoleon's tests sounded frivolous and illegal to some of the goddesses who visited. Still, as the word of Napoleon's unique testing system spread, more and more goddesses began to understand the value of empathy and kindness. They began to spend further time with the people of the area, hearkening to their stories and helping them in any way they could. As Napoleon watched the goddesses interact with his people, he began to see casts of empathy and kindness in numerous of them. Still, it was not until the queen with whom he'd fallen in love arrived that he saw true empathy in action. She did not just feel uncomfortable with the pea, she could smell the lowest effects that were out of place or amiss. She noticed the lowest details, and she'd ask after them, showing uncanny mindfulness and a sense of empathy towards everything and everyone. From that moment on, Napoleon knew that he'd set up the perfect mate to rule the area with him, a mate who valued empathy and kindness just as important as he did. Together, they would make an area that was kind, fair, and just, and they would rule with empathy and compassion, always putting the requirements of their people first. As Napoleon watched the queen arrive at the area, he could not help but notice how beautiful and poised she was. She was altitudinous and regal, with long flowing hair and a warm smile on her face. He knew that numerous other tycoons would be fighting for her hand, but he was determined to see if she had the empathy and kindness that he was looking for in a woman. Napoleon decided to test her in the same way that he'd tested other goddesses who had come to the area. He instructed his retainers to place a single pea under 20 mattresses on her bed and waited to see how she'd reply in the morning. The coming morning, Napoleon visited the queen's chambers and asked her how she had slept. He anticipated her to say that she had slept well, as numerous of the other goddesses had done before her. Still, to his surprise, the queen replied that she hadn't slept well and had been uncomfortable throughout the night. Napoleon was impressed by her response, and he could see the empathy and perceptivity in her eyes. He knew that he'd set up someone who participated in his values and beliefs, and he wanted to spend further time getting to know her. He spent the coming many days with the queen, taking long walks in the auditoriums and talking about their expedients and dreams. As they got to know each other better, Napoleon began to see the world through her eyes. He realized that empathy wasn't just a quality that he wanted in a woman, but also a sovereign. The queen was kind to everyone she met, from the smallest menial to the loftiest noble. She always heeded their problems and did her stylish to help them. Napoleon was inspired by her compassion and began to see the significance of empathy in his own life and in the way he ruled the area. Over time, Napoleon and the Queen fell deeply in love. They participated in a deep connection grounded on their collective values of kindness, empathy, and compassion. They were married in a grand form, and together they ruled the area with fairness and empathy, always putting the requirements of their people first. The Queen's perceptivity and empathy helped to make their area a better place for all who lived there, and her influence helped Napoleon to become a further compassionate sovereign. The coming morning, Napoleon arrived at the Queen's chambers and asked her how she had slept. The Queen's answer surprised him. She replied that she hadn't slept well and had been uncomfortable throughout the night. Napoleon was intrigued by the Queen's response. It was the first time he'd heard a queen complain about their sleeping arrangements. He decided to ask her further about how she was feeling and why she was uncomfortable. The Queen explained that she had felt a small lump under her mattress and it had kept her awake all night. She described the feeling as however there was commodity hard, conceivably a pea, that was pressing against her back, making it delicate for her to find a comfortable position. Napoleon was amazed. He'd placed a single pea under 20 mattresses, and yet, the Queen had still been suitable to feel its presence. He knew that he'd set up someone who wasn't only sensitive to her passions but also to the passions of others. Napoleon respected the Queen's empathy and perceptivity, and he felt that he'd eventually set up someone who participated in his values and beliefs. He decided to spend further time with her to get to know her better. Over the coming many days, Napoleon and the Queen spent time together, walking in the auditoriums and talking about their lives. The Queen participated in stories of her guests, and the Napoleon heeded with interest, chancing himself drawn to her compassion and warmth. As they spent further time together, Napoleon realized that the Queen wasn't only compassionate and kind but also intelligent and thoughtful. He was struck by how she could smell the lowest details and how she was always concerned with the good of others. It was not long before Napoleon realized that he was falling in love with the Queen. He knew that he'd set up someone who could help him rule the area with empathy and compassion, and he felt that she was the perfect mate for him. Together, Napoleon and the Queen ruled the area with kindness and empathy. They made sure that everyone, anyhow of their social status, was treated with respect and compassion. They heeded the requirements of the people and worked to produce a society where everyone could thrive. The Queen's perceptivity to the small pea under her mattress had proved to be the defining moment in their relationship. It allowed Napoleon to see her true nature and fall in love with her. It had also shown him the power of empathy and kindness and how it could make a real difference in the world. As Napoleon spent further time with the Queen, he was impressed by her empathy and perceptivity. He'd no way met someone who watched so deeply about the passions of others, and he set up himself drawn to her kind nature. Napoleon decided to get to know the Queen more and spent numerous hours walking with her in the auditoriums of the palace. As they rambled through the lush verdure, they talked about their experience and dreams for the future. The Queen was intelligent and well-read, and Napoleon was impressed by her knowledge and perceptivity. He set up himself drawn to her wisdom and intelligence, and he enjoyed hearkening to her talk about her guests and her views on life. As they walked, Napoleon began to open up to the Queen and partake in his expeditions and dreams. He talked about his desire to rule the area with empathy and compassion and his belief that a sovereign should always put the requirements of the people first. The Queen was impressed by Napoleon's ideas and his fidelity to the well-being of his subjects. She could see that he participated in her values of kindness and empathy, and she felt a deep connection with him. As their exchanges continued, Napoleon and the Queen began to grow closer. They talked about their families, their springtime, and their struggles. They laughed and participated in stories, and Napoleon felt as though he'd eventually set up someone who truly understood him. It was not long before Napoleon realized that he was falling in love with the Queen. He felt a deep connection to her, and he knew that she was the perfect mate for him in ruling the area with empathy and compassion. As their relationship strengthened, Napoleon and the Queen came thick. They worked together to produce a society where everyone was treated with respect and kindness. They heeded the requirements of the people and worked lifelessly to produce a world where everyone could thrive. In the end, Napoleon knew that he'd set up not just a woman but a true mate. He'd set up someone who participated in his values and his fidelity to creating a better world. And he knew that with the Queen by his side, he could do anything. As Napoleon and the Queen spent further time together, they talked about their backgrounds and guests. The Queen commended in the Napoleon that she had grown up in a small villa and had always been tutored to suppose of others before herself. The Queen explained that her parents had inseminated in her a deep sense of empathy and compassion. They had tutored her that everyone had their struggles and that it was important to be kind and understanding to those around her. Despite her humble parenting, the Queen had always known that she wanted to make a difference in the world. She had read books about great leaders and thinkers, and she had pictured one day being suitable to use her empathy and compassion to produce a better world. Napoleon was moved by the Queen's story. He could see that her empathy and kindness weren't just ingrained traits, but were a result of her parenting and the values that her parents had inseminated in her. Napoleon also participated in his guests with the Queen. He talked about how he'd grown up in the palace and had always been tutored that his position came with great responsibility. He'd learned from his parents that being a leader meant putting the requirements of the people first. As Napoleon and the Queen participated in their stories, they realized that they had more in common than they had originally allowed. They both believed that empathy and compassion were essential traits for a leader, and they both participated in a deep desire to produce a world where everyone could thrive. Together, Napoleon and the Queen worked to bring their participated vision to life. They heeded the requirements of the people, and they worked lifelessly to produce a society where everyone was treated with kindness and respect. In the end, their participation values and fidelity to empathy and compassion allowed them to produce an area where everyone could thrive. And the Queen's parenting and the values that her parents had inseminated in her played an important part in shaping her into the compassionate leader that she had come. As the Queen participated in her story with Napoleon, he heeded hard, hanging on to every word. He was moved by the way that she had been raised and the values that her parents had inseminated in her. Napoleon had always known that empathy was an important quality in a woman, but he hadn't considered its significance in a sovereign. As the Queen spoke, he began to see her in a new light. He realized that empathy wasn't just a desirable quality in a woman, but in a sovereign as well. Napoleon had always believed that a sovereign should be someone intelligent, strong, and able. But as he heeded the Queen, he began to see that there was further to being a good sovereign than just these traits. He realized that empathy and compassion were essential traits for a sovereign and that a leader who demanded these traits couldn't truly serve the people. Napoleon began to see the Queen as further than just an implicit woman. He saw her as an implicit mate in ruling the area with empathy and compassion. He respected her for the way that she had been raised and the values that she held, and he felt that she'd make an excellent sovereign. As the days went by, Napoleon and the Queen spent further time together. They bandied their participated vision for the area and talked about how they could work together to produce a society where everyone could thrive. Napoleon realized that the Queen's empathy and compassion weren't just desirable traits in a woman, but in a sovereign as well. And he knew that with her by his side, he could produce a truly great area. In the end, Napoleon decided that the Queen wasn't just the right choice for a woman, but for a maiden ruling the area with empathy and compassion. And the two of them worked lifelessly to produce a society where everyone was treated with kindness and respect, making the area a better place for all who lived there. The Queen's kind and compassionate nature extended beyond just her relationship with Napoleon. She was kind to everyone she met, from the smallest menial to the loftiest noble. The Queen no way saw anyone beneath her or unworthy of her attention and care. Rather, she believed that everyone merited to be treated with kindness and respect. Whenever someone came to her with a problem, the Queen always heeded attentively, no way interposing nor dismissing their enterprises. She took the time to truly understand their situation and empathize with their struggles. Also, she'd do everything in her power to help them, no matter how big or small the problem. Still, the Queen would offer to help them, not because it was her duty as a queen if a menial was floundering with a task. She'd take the time to show them how to do the task duly, and offer words of stimulant and support. Indeed, the loftiest noble in the area would find the Queen's door open if they demanded her backing. She treated everyone inversely, with the same kindness and compassion, anyhow of their rank or status. Her empathy and kindness did not just profit those around her, it also had a positive impact on the area as a whole. The people knew that they could calculate on the Queen to adhere to their enterprises and take action to help them. This helped to make trust and a sense of community throughout the area. The Queen's approach to leadership also inspired others to act with empathy and kindness. The people of the area began to see the value in treating each other with compassion, and they were inspired by the Queen's illustration. Overall, the Queen's kind and compassionate nature had a ripple effect on the entire area. She set an illustration of how leaders can rule with empathy and compassion and inspired others to act in kind. Her conduct helped to produce a more harmonious and caring society, where everyone was treated with kindness and respect. As Napoleon continued to spend time with the Queen, he began to see the world through her eyes. He realized that he'd been eyeless to the struggles of the poor in his area and that he had a responsibility to make effects more. The Queen's illustration of empathy and kindness had a profound impact on Napoleon. He started to question the way effects were done in the area and became more apprehensive of the suffering of those who were less fortunate than himself. He began to realize that his part as a leader wasn't just to govern the area but to help those in need. Napoleon started to make changes in the area that would help the poor. He began by setting up programs to give food and sanctum to those who were floundering. He also established seminaries to give education to children who would not have had access to it else. Napoleon's empathy and compassion were apparent in every decision he made. He'd take the time to hear those who were floundering, and he'd seek out their input when making opinions that would affect their lives. He worked lifelessly to make the area a better place for all its citizens, not just the fat and important. The people of the area were impressed by Napoleon's metamorphosis. They had no way seen a sovereign who was so invested in the weal of his subjects. They saw in him the same empathy and kindness that the Queen had displayed, and they began to feel hopeful about the future of the area. Napoleon and the Queen worked together to make the area a more just and indifferent place. They used their empathy and compassion to guide their opinions and conduct, and their reign was marked by a sense of minding and community that hadn't been present before. In the end, Napoleon's decision to seek out a woman who was compassionate and kind had far-reaching consequences for the area. His cooperation with the Queen helped to produce a more just and indifferent society, one in which everyone was treated with kindness and respect. Napoleon's metamorphosis was a testament to the power of empathy and the significance of ruling with compassion. As Napoleon and the Queen continued to spend time together, their fellowship bloomed into a camaraderie deeper. They participated in a connection that went beyond empathy and kindness, and Napoleon began to see the Queen as his soulmate. One day, as they were walking in the auditoriums, Napoleon stopped and turned to the Queen. He took her hands in his and looked deeply into her eyes. "Princess," he said, "I know that we've only known each other for a short time, but I feel that I've known you ever. Will you do me the honor of getting my woman?" The Queen was overcome with emotion. She had no way been happier than when she was with Napoleon, and she knew that she wanted to spend the rest of her life with him. "Yes," she said, her voice slightly above a tail. "I'll marry you, my Napoleon." Napoleon and the Queen were married in a grand form that was attended by dignitaries from all over the area. The people of the area rejoiced in the union of their kind and compassionate autocrats, and they knew that the future of their area was in good hands. As they stood together on the deck of the palace, looking out over the area that they would one day rule together, Napoleon and the Queen knew that their love for each other was erected on a foundation of empathy and kindness. They had both learned that to truly love someone, you had to be willing to put yourself in their shoes and see the world through their eyes. Their relationship was a testament to the power of empathy, and it served as an illustration to the people of the area of the kind of autocrats they could be. Together, Napoleon and the Queen would work to make the area a better place, one that was erected on the values of kindness, compassion, and empathy. After their marriage, Napoleon and the Queen settled into their places as autocrats of the area. They worked lifelessly to make the area a better place for all who lived there, with kindness and empathy guiding every decision they made. They started by addressing the requirements of the poorest and most vulnerable members of the area. Napoleon and the Queen tête-à-tête visited the townlets and municipalities, speaking with the people and hearkening to their enterprises. They worked to give better access to healthcare, education, and other introductory requirements, icing that everyone had to live a staid life. Napoleon and the Queen also worked to promote equivalency and justice in the area. They abolished outdated and discriminative laws, icing that all citizens were treated fairly and with respect. They also made it a precedent to hear from marginalized and underrepresented groups, incorporating their perspectives into their decision-making process. Their sweats didn't go unnoticed by the people of the area. They were cherished by all who knew them, and the area flourished under their compassionate rule. They were frequently seen out and about, interacting with the people, and they were known for their open-door policy, drinking anyone who wanted to speak with them. Over time, Napoleon and the Queen grew old together, but their love and fidelity to the area no way wavered. They continued to work lifelessly to ensure that every person in the area had to live a good life. They were an alleviation to numerous, showing that kindness and empathy weren't just merits, but rates that could help make a better world. When they passed down, the area mourned their loss deeply. But their heritage lived on, as their children and grandchildren continued to rule with the same values of kindness and empathy that the Napoleon and Queen had supported. Their reign had set the standard for what it meant to be a just and compassionate sovereign, and the people of the area would no way forget their heritage. In the end, Napoleon and the Queen showed that empathy wasn't just a quality to look for in a mate, but also an important particularity for a sovereign. They ruled with kindness and compassion, making their area a better place for everyone.